what everyone seems to be talking about. That's Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We're so glad you joined us today. This is going to be an exciting show. We're going to go fast and furious with this topic, and we're going to need your help to dive right in on this conversation. I'm Debbie Georgiani along with Jerry Usher, and today we are talking about when possibly your spouse becomes your roommate. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What does that mean? What happens to soulmates? What happens to our sacramental marriage? All these questions start floating around in our brain, and we're going to talk about it today because many of you have written in and shared with us, why don't you do more relationship shows and talk about the ins and outs of what happens in a relationship? Well, that's what we're doing today. So make sure you quickly text your friends and email your friends and say, hurry up, tune in to Take Two on EWTN because this is going to be an exciting show. Hi, Jerry.
Hey, good morning. Well, good morning for us. Good afternoon, other parts of the country, and good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you happen to be around the world. Good to have you with us here on Take Two. Yeah, this is an interesting topic, as Debbie said. We get a lot. We just got an email show suggestion today that we're going to put on our calendar for an upcoming date. But this is one of those shows that I think really Debbie takes a look at something that's very important and very serious, and I think it would be helpful, Deb, and maybe you can do this for our listeners, is just when we say spouses becoming roommates. Well, I mean, spouses are roommates,
sure.
Of course, but it's much more than that. You mentioned the sacramental marriage, the call to be united in heart, mind, and deed, and all of these other things, and close and share your lives together. And unfortunately, sometimes that starts out that way, and then I guess, as you're going to tell us, and it could just become a situation where, what is it? A couple just kind of decides to stay under the same roof and coexist, but not really have that spark of love? What is it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we know that realistically, when you're with me being married, I can talk about this. Your spouse is your roommate. You share everything that's in your home, and that's true. But when the marriage shifts, and there have been definite shifts in marriages whereby both parties or maybe one party decides there's really not a connection, there's not a deep bond. And yes, Jerry, we want to keep the finances together, we want to keep all the domestic chores together and everything, but the marriage itself starts to crumble. And we've heard this, I've heard it time and time again, that there are a lot of very lonely spouses, Jerry, that don't know what to do because they want to have what you just said, Jerry, that marital spark, that deep relationship, and yet one party or even both parties are just drifting away. It's almost like they've turned their backs on each other and they're just sharing the house instead of sharing the marriage. And we're going to talk about that today. If being transitioning to a full-blown roommate is a bad thing, how to get it back on track, what it means, what does it mean to the marriage, and we need to hear from you. So we're going to bring on a guest shortly, but before that, we wanted to kind of lay the foundation so that you could start getting really excited about calling in, because this show is driven by you. We kind of set the stage and you take it to where you feel it needs to go. And we believe that the Holy Spirit is in the mix. So when that happens, there are people out there listening and it penetrates and maybe they can make changes in their own marriage that can better it and get closer to God. Because marriage is about two people getting to heaven, helping each other attain holiness. And when something breaks down in the marriage, it's a ripple effect from there. 1-800-585-9396. We're talking about if your spouse has become your roommate. Now, here's the thing. You may not want to share that on the air. And we don't like to take anonymous calls because we don't like to call people anonymous. That's not really a name. So if you want to pick your confirmation name or another name and you want to call in, feel free to do that, and then you can technically remain anonymous, but we can call you by name because this is what we are. We're a family. We're doing this together. 1-800-585-9396. I hope that explained it a little bit better on where I thought this show was going to go, Jerry.
Yeah, I think it made a lot of sense, and I have to believe that it's resonating in the hearts of many of our listeners right now. And so we would love to hear from you. Again, you can just share very generally if you want, share some details if you'd like. There are a lot of reasons why this happens. Debbie mentioned, for example, it could be one spouse, it could be two, it could be faith issues. Maybe one spouse made concessions going into the marriage so as to kind of keep the peace and keep things going, and then as the marriage goes on over the years, one spouse, say, for example, stops going to church or practicing the faith. It could be a couple staying together just for the sake of the kids. If you've experienced this, and maybe especially if you have found a way to rekindle that spark in your marriage, there are so many people you could help with your take on this today at 1-800-585-9396. 1-800-585-9396. I do want to ask you this, Debbie. A lot of people would take this further, i.e. all the way to divorce, and but some, what we're talking about today, decide not to take that ultimate step. And it's a curious thing, isn't it, that they still, I think, believe that they can be happy and somewhat peaceful under the same roof and not go all the way to completely splitting up. I find that intriguing.
I've had a few friends that actually stayed together many years, Jerry, as roommates, and it was strictly, like you just said, it was about the kids. It was about finances. They were actually, quote-unquote, friends, so they thought that it would be better to stay together for the family's sake. And eventually, the couples that I'm thinking of, they divorced, and they remained friends afterwards. And they felt that that was they felt that that was the right way to handle it for the kids. I kind of see this a different way. I think I struggle with this because I understand that financial situations and the kids' situations, the family situations may be the thing that drives people to want to just stay together just for the sake of the kids. However, marriage is sacred. And marriage is important, and it has a role. And when we neglect that role and we change it, then it loses its importance. It loses its power. And that's unfortunate. And I've often said to people, go and get help. Go and be proactive. Do something to make it better. Don't just, like you said it earlier, Jerry, coexist. That's not going to help attain holiness if you really believe. Now, you have to go with the premise that you really believe that a sacramental marriage is indeed in place to get two people to grow in holiness. If you believe that premise, then you got to fight for what's important in the sacredness of that marriage and make it the best it can possibly be. That's what I think anyway, Jerry. And I struggle with this because I know that people have hardships and they do stay together. And is it for the right or wrong reasons? It's not for me to judge, but I just from a sacramental marriage standpoint, I would think that they're losing out on it, and that's unfortunate.
Well, we're going to talk about this topic even further here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Rose Sweet is going to join us in just a minute here. She has got a lot of experience in relationships. She talks about putting your faith into your relationships, and we're going to talk about that with Rose on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie when we continue.
I'm Raymond Arroyo with Mother Angelica, A Remarkable Life. In the early 50s, this monastery behind me, Sancta Clara in Canton, Ohio, would host something called interracial days. These were Sundays set aside for black and white Catholics to celebrate Mass and pray together. It was considered progressive at the time. To a nun inside these walls, Sister Angelica, this would profoundly shape her future life. It sensitized her to the racial tensions erupting all over the country and would be partly responsible for her later founding of a monastery in Birmingham, Alabama. Stay with EWTN as we celebrate the life of Mother Mary Angelica.
The EWTN Book of the Month for August is Answering the Questions of Jesus. Father Andrew Apostoli's insight and wisdom will guide you to a deeper understanding of who Jesus is and what he is asking of you today. The book and companion DVD are available through the EWTN Religious Catalog web store, EWTNRC.com. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or call 1-800-854-6316.
Great to have you with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio. We have been informed, actually, by our crack show team that we've got some phone lines that are down. We do have Rose Sweet on a line right now. We're going to bring her in a moment, but I think the lines that you would call in on, keep trying. We want to hear from you and get your takes at 1-800-585-9396. But those lines are they're being worked on right now. However, you can email take2@EWTN.com, or you can tweet at Take2Show, or post on EWTN Catholic Radio Facebook page your thoughts on this, and we will get them right away. But we want to, speaking of getting right away, we want to get to Rose Sweet. You've heard her on Catholic Radio, seen her on EWTN television. Rose is a Catholic author and conference speaker, and her passion is helping people live their faith in the daily details by putting religion into relationships. She's authored 10 books on relationships, and we are so glad to have her with us today. Debbie and I welcome Rose Sweet to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Hi, Rose.
Hi, Jerry. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Rose. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. You guys are doing some good work there.
Well, we're excited about today's show. I actually, during the break, I texted Jerry and I said, I wonder if Satan doesn't want us to do this show, and that's why the phone lines blew up. Seriously, Rose, because, whenever we're talking about relationships, it seems, in marriage, it seems that Satan just finds a way to rear his ugly head and try to tear it down. And I'm sure in your work, Rose, in your ministry, when you're out there in retreats and speaking and writing books, you come across that all the time, that there's an attack on marriage.
I do, and I'm able to recognize it pretty quickly now, and then recall, as Catholics, that Christ's power is even greater than that. To not be shocked or surprised or even afraid, to just draw on the Lord and the graces that He has for us. So relationships and marriage, it's where we all come from. It's the basis of our entire civilization, and that is under great attack.
Yeah. Well, I hope you heard the beginning, Rose. Pardon me, Jerry, for saying this. I just want to make sure, Rose, did you hear the beginning of the introduction that we did? Were you able to hear it?
I did not. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. So basically, Jerry and I were just talking about our thoughts on this idea of roommates and soulmates and what it means and what some of the factors that play in. We talked about how sometimes couples will stay together for financial reasons or for the kids, and they somehow reconcile that it's okay to be roommates, and they find some sort of peace in it. I was saying to Jerry before the break, Rose, that I think if you come from the premise that you believe that a sacramental marriage is for two people to attain holiness, to journey together towards heaven, then I think there's a trouble in that, to compromise and say, okay, well, then I am just going to be happy with just a roommate situation and no real deep relationship. Am I way off base? I mean, feel free to tell me that. I mean, for me, I think it's a sad compromise.
Well, you know what, Debbie, that's a good point. You are right and you're not right at the same time, and I think you already know the answer. Mm-hmm. Remember, it takes two people to have a successful relationship. And let's say I'm working myself crazy, drawing on all the graces of the sacrament of our marriage, but my husband is not responding, right? Mm-hmm. I can't force him, and God won't force him either, to respond to those graces. And I may have to come to a point where I recognize this is as good as it's going to get for now, maybe hoping and trusting that the Lord will work on him, but not being always waiting for that to be happy, to find happiness in the here and now, and broaden my perspective. But you're right that some people, like you mentioned, for the kids or the sake of the money issues, they give up. That's what they do. They take the easy way. they have some kind of resentment that's kind of deep down there, and they just go, oh, well, so what? This is all I can do. Let's move on. And that never works. That actually drains the relationship. Doesn't that make sense?
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I agree. I'm thinking of friends. I shared earlier friends that actually did that. They chose to settle and stay together as roommates for the kids and for financial reasons. Then they ultimately ended up divorcing. And I don't know if that was, I thought to myself, wow, there was so many years there that what was happening to their spiritual growth during those times? Was it stagnant?
Well, now here's another thing. Remember, if we read a lot of the lives of the saints, some of these saintly women and men too, were in bad marriages. And that actually did become their particular path to holiness. So, each situation, because people are unique, each marriage is unique, and we can't assess a particular marriage, because here's the other thing too. What if, like you say, your friends just compromised and they just kind of gave up and stayed together and then ultimately got divorced? But what if in that time period they did open up to graces and something changed? The fact that they had no feeling and no emotions and they stuck it together, then later something just burst open and they were able to rebuild and renew something. So that's the other thing. We can't give up, and you know this. You can't give up quickly. You have to give it every chance possible. But you're right, though. Other people, they stay and they're miserable, and everybody around them is miserable.
Right.
Rose Sweet is with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Keep trying to call in. We've been informed that the trunk lines, I guess they call them, for our phones that get you on the show are down. But I've already gotten an email at take2@EWTN.com. David sent in a question. We'll get to that shortly here. And also, you can post on EWTN Catholic Radio Facebook page if you have a comment or a question about this topic, spouses becoming more like roommates and not having that thriving sacramental union that they maybe once shared earlier in their marriage. But our phone number is 800-585-9396. If you keep on trying, well, we'll definitely know when the phone lines are fixed if you get through. 1-800-585-9396. Where I would like to go here for just a minute, Rose, is talking about what a healthy marital relationship actually is. Because if I understand correctly, you would say that it could involve some aspects of like maybe sleeping in separate bedrooms for various reasons. One spouse snores, for example. So some of these things that people might look at and say, "Wow, they've lost that closeness in their marriage." That may not necessarily be the case.
That's right. We have to be so careful about looking over the fence into the neighbor's yard, the neighbor's marriage, and making judgments. I mean, sometimes we're right, but a lot of the times we're wrong. We don't know what goes really on between two people behind closed doors, and I don't just mean sexually. I mean they're the most intimate part of their relationships and how they relate and how they regard each other. And maybe they have prayerfully and honestly with each other without resentment come to an agreement that works for both of them, that seems unusual for somebody else. And we need to be open to that. I'm not talking about wife swapping or anything, but separate bedrooms or not ever going to the movie together. Maybe one spouse loves going to movies and the other one just hates it, and they just come to an agreement for the rest of their life they're not going to ever go to movies together. And some people might say, well, that's pretty selfish and bad. Well, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe the one who wants to go to movies all the time really has been able to let go of that because there's so much other good in the relationship. And, it's so, we are complex people, and our relationships are complex, simple and complex at the same time.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, Rose, about not looking over the fence, because I agree with you. Having been married before and married to Marty, which I absolutely adore him, and it's interesting how people will make judgments from the outside when, especially if you're coming from a divorce and going into another marriage, even if you're annulled or whatnot, people make judgments and they'll say, well, what happened? What went wrong in your first marriage? Or what, and they try to make assessments on what they think was the picture, and they to try and get it in their head to reconcile it. And it's very interesting, and but from the receiving end of it, it's very painful. And so I'm glad you mentioned that we really don't know what happens between two people behind closed doors, and to make labels or judgments on it is painful to those people, and it's painful to ourselves because we probably have it wrong.
Right, and back to Jerry's question, what does a healthy marriage look like? There's so many. What does a delicious hamburger taste like? You could have bacon on it, you could have onions on it. There's so many ways that a marriage can be good and healthy, and it really depends on the two people. And that's the beauty of a sacrament. Whether they're roommates or not, or if whatever is going on in the relationship, the sacrament is still there. And the sacrament is like a well of graces. They can either draw from those graces or just let them sit stagnant. But it's always there. And a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage, is one where they mutually respect each other, don't carry deep resentments, or when a resentment comes up, they know how to let go of it, and they know how to work together to sacrifice for the greater good of the other person. And that can be in big ways, little ways. And guess what? Sometimes sex doesn't even have to be a part of that. Being married, that there are times when you feel and you experience great love and devotion and fidelity to your spouse, but you have no sex drive for the moment or for the month or for the week. So sex is like the icing on the cake. It's the expression of, it's one most beautiful, profound physical expression of the marriage, but it's not the only one.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, and we're hoping to get some of your takes on the air, 1-800-585-9396. Our guest is Rose Sweet, talking about when the sacramental, the flame of love that burns brightly can sometimes begin to dim and even flicker a little bit, and the spouses just simply live under the same roof as roommates, and why sometimes that happens, and what a couple can do about it. Our phone lines we're having a little bit of trouble with them right now, but please do, if you've got a question or a comment on this, please do persevere. We would love to get you on the program today. Got about 2 minutes, Rose, before we have to break real quick. What would you say is missing in a relationship or going on in a relationship where the couples kind of grow apart?
Good question. I think I have 5 or 6 little bullet points. One is our natural tendency to selfishness. All of us are prone to that, and that's why we have to stay close to the sacraments. Other one is laziness, just simple laziness. Another one is the tendency we have to put way too much on our plates, and then there's no time left for the spouse. Sometimes we're just distracted by other things. Also, naive thinking can play into this. A lot of times people get married and everything is done, and the wedding is over, and now they think that the marriage requires no work. That's really naive and, damaging to the relationship. So selfishness, laziness, naive thinking, being distracted, and just putting too much on our plates, those are the things that can take any marriage down, any friendship down, any relationship down.
Wow. Do you when you go out and speak, Rose, do you cover all this? When you go out to parishes and retreats, do you cover all this? Because this is good stuff.
Debbie, you know I do. Because you know what? I've lived through a lot of this myself. Yeah. I know the frustration and the pain. And I've, been able to discover great riches in our Catholic teaching that are very practical, all about relationships. So I'm just, and they work. And I'm so excited. I love to go and share this with people because their eyes pop open and they go, oh, that's me, or oh, that's him, or that's her. Okay, we can do this. We can do this.
Right. Yeah, I was leading you into that, Rose. I know you do that. I've been watching
and
you.
I followed right along.
I love it. But your ministry has been great. You've helped. And when I was in adult formation for many years, Rose, you don't even know it. Before I met you, your ministry has helped in the parish that I worked at. So thank you on behalf of all of us adult formation directors and RE directors that we've used your great ministry at rosesweet.com. That's where you can find Rose Sweet. We're going to be right back talking more about when spouses can turn into roommates. Is that good or bad? Well, we've got expert Rose Sweet with us. So this is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We'll be right back.
Welcome to EWTN's Catholic Almanac.
It's August 3rd, and today the church honors Nicodemus, the member of the Sanhedrin who was a secret follower of Jesus. He convinced the other members that Jesus was entitled to a trial and later helped St. Joseph of Arimathea prepare Jesus for burial. Also today, the church remembers Lydia Purpuraria, a wealthy businesswoman. We hear of her in the Acts of the Apostles, where God opened her ears to the teachings of St. Paul. She was his first convert and provided him with food and lodging.
Jesus said, "Love your neighbor as yourself." He was making the assumption that we love ourselves. And love is expressed in actions, not just feelings. So, do you love yourself in action? I know, the demands of life make you feel selfish when you take a break from studying or working or taking care of the kids to get, quote, me time. But when you don't care for yourself, you're leaving your loved ones with the worst version of you, tired, haggard, burnt out. And if you're a parent, what's that communicate to your kids about their dignity and worth when they learn by example that self-care isn't important? So if not for your own sake, do it for those who love you. Spend time indulging yourself in things that inspire you so you can live an inspired life and be an inspiring person. Read a good book, eat a little sushi, take a walk, watch a movie, work out, take an extra long shower. You know what? You're worth it. God thinks so. This is Chris Stefanik from RealLifeCatholic.com on EWTN Radio.
It's the start of a new day for Morning Catholic Radio.
To be in the presence of the academic dean, instructor of moral theology and pastoral studies, and vice president at the Dominican House of Studies, Father Thomas Petrie. Man.
Doctor of Sacred Theology, Order of Preachers.
Well, check out the big brain on Brad.
We love the Dominicans.
Morning Glory, Catholic from the start. Weekday mornings, 7 Eastern on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Great conversation with Rose Sweet about marital relationships and the different forms that they take. And we're kind of diving into when spouses drift apart, at least affectively, maybe continue to live together, and it becomes more like a roommate situation. If you've experienced this, or maybe you've had that happen and then found your way back to that spark of intimacy and love and that sacramental union, keep trying to call. We're having a little trouble with the phone lines. Hopefully these are going to be fixed soon, so when they are, you'll want to dial 800-585-9396. But we do have some questions coming in, and so I'm going to go. Rose, this one came from David via email. He says, thanks for doing the show. Many of my contemporaries in marriage, late 40s, early 50s, are in a similar situation. Frankly, I feel a connection and bond with my wife, and we are both practicing Catholics for whom divorce is not an option. But it seems that we have put the marriage on the back burner in dealing with all the stress of raising non-compliant teenagers and financial issues due to a job loss. David says, frankly, it seems like we take our marriage for granted as we focus on putting out the immediate fires of dealing with the problems of teens making poor choices. When we are alone together, all we talk about is the kids and our problems. Do you have any specific suggestions on how to keep our marriage sacred and a top priority during the hard times? And that's from David via email at take2@ewtn.com.
Wow. I bet your listeners are all, very many of them are going, oh yeah, this is so common. First of all, I would say don't worry too much that the fact that you're still trying to raise kids and you have money problems or job issues is getting in the way of the honeymoon part of your marriage. That's normal. That doesn't always last forever. But one thing is, I would say, if you walked into a room and it was completely trashed, let's say it was your bedroom, and you were exhausted, and you got to go to sleep, right? But everything is all over the room, right? Where do you begin? What do you tackle first? Well, you throw everything off the bed, and you climb into bed and worry about the rest later. That's to illustrate the fact that if you're very aware that your marriage is suffering from taking care of all this other stuff, let that other stuff go. Knock it off to the side. The kids aren't going to die. You know, your roof is still over your head, at least for a night or two. Yes, money problems are real and kid problems are real, but they can't constantly take center stage in our lives. We mistakenly think that to be good parents or good stewards or good people, that we have to take care of all our problems. And here's something from Scripture, and this is where we put our religion and our relationships. Jesus was with people. They were blind. They were crippled. They were in pain. They were hurting. His heart went out of them. He wanted to fix all of them and take care of all of them, right? But at some point, he always said goodbye. He left. He went off on his own to be alone with the Father, to open up, to receive the Father, and to pour himself back to the Father, and to enter into that beautiful communion, that quiet, intimate communion of just the two of them. Well, the three of them, because the Holy Spirit's always there. But Jesus shows us that problems are always going to be there, and we have to do the best we can, but there's a point where we draw ourselves away and renew ourselves. And first, for spouses who are in this situation, I would individually go to the Lord and then go to each other. And it can be an hour. It doesn't need to be a whole weekend. You don't need to pack up and say goodbye to everybody and go spend money. There's lots of ways we can do this. Does that make sense?
Well, David came in via email, so I'm hoping he's listening, Rose, because I'm sitting on the edge of my seat listening to every word you have to say, and I know that others probably are doing that as well, and I think that is just amazing wisdom that you're imparting to us. Rose, let me just add to something I wanted to ask you and add to this. When David, great advice you gave David and his wife. What about this idea, because Rose, I think you know I do Christian life skills, and one of the Christian life skills they talk about is when you have problems that are ongoing around you, you have to consciously put parameters in place to say, we are not going to talk about this for an hour. We're not going to talk about this how do you feel about that? Like, what if David and his wife sat down for dinner and said, okay, we are not going to talk finances or the children for 1 hour. We're going to find something else to talk about.
That's wonderful. That's such common sense. You know, like, okay, imagine you went out on a date with somebody. You're dating and you're all excited and you're all in love, and you're both talking about the problems with your mother and your grandmother and the finance. You don't talk about life's problems.
Right.
You talk about fun things and dreams and hopes. You know, and I know in a counseling program that I was in once a long time ago said, just put all that stuff aside and talk about your dreams. Mm-hmm. What do you dream? What do you still dream about? And that somehow two people talking about their dreams together causes a really beautiful bonding thing to reappear. You know, what are your dreams? What do you want to do? What do you want to change? It might be even redecorating the bedroom. Here I am in the bedroom again, right? It doesn't have to be big things. It can be simple. But it's like, what else is there that you desire? What are your deepest desires? That's a powerful conversation. And you know what? We should even have that conversation with our kids, with our non-compliant teens, as David said.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Marty and I, we love to spend sessions of just dreaming and just envisioning things. And it does bring you very close together. There's a bond that forms that is, you can't describe it. So I would echo that completely and say to David, I hope he's listening and can maybe take some of your words, Rose, and incorporate them in his marriage right away, and others as well. Because we've got Nathan that just weighed in, who's asking, now keep in mind, listeners, this is why we're doing this. Unfortunately, the phone lines are down, so you guys are texting in, emailing in, and they're coming in pretty quickly. So Nathan, who listens on iHeartRadio, asks, what can I do to fix a marriage what can you do to fix a marriage when they don't sleep in the same room? It seems so much communication happens before bed and the first thing in the morning. You addressed that a little bit, Rose, about how so much of the intimacy and romance happens outside of the bedroom. But Nathan wants to know how you can fix it when they're not sleeping together in the same room.
Well, I know you say this all the time. On a quick radio call, you can't fix a marriage because we don't know exactly what's going on in a certain situation. But here's the thing. People sleep in separate bedrooms can still have sexual intimacy anywhere in the house, anytime, The problem isn't separate bedrooms. The problem is, why did they go to separate bedrooms, and are they staying there? If there is unresolved bitterness, resentment, giving up, harboring, ill will toward each other, if that's why the people have separated, the problem isn't the bedroom situation. The problem is the relationship, and that begs counseling, honest discussion, a spiritual director. Whatever you do, you need to uncover that. But usually the separate bedroom issue is a symptom, not the issue. It's not the problem. It's the symptom of a problem. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Take two with Jerry and Debbie, and we are taking a text and, not text so much, but email and social media questions today. EWTN Catholic Radio is our Facebook page. Hey, like it. Stop by and like that page if you haven't done so already. And you can get through via email at take2@ewtn.com. And here's a very important question, Rose, from Diane just emailed this in. She says, my husband and I recently decided to live as brother and sister as Diane awaits her annulment process to go through. She says, this has been difficult for us, especially for my husband. She says, I asked my priest, and he said that also includes any form of, like she says, kissing on the mouth. Is there anything else that they need to refrain from? I think rather than maybe getting into a list here, maybe just address this issue from a general standpoint, Rose. And by the way, I emailed her back. I said, God bless you for having the courage to take the right path here, because Rose, as you know, a lot of people don't wait for that annulment to come through, and this is going to be a grace-filled situation, however it comes out, because they're being obedient to God and to the Church's laws. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, that's another complex topic. Diane, God love you and your husband. For being obedience brings its own rewards. Here's the thing. Remember why I said this before. Each person is different and unique. Therefore, each marriage and each couple is unique. There are some couples who can withdraw sexually from each other, and they can kiss on the mouth and be fine. There are other couples who struggle with lust or whatever, or deep desire that they can't master very well. And God love them, and maybe kissing on the mouth for them would not be smart. But you can't just blanketly say you cannot kiss on the mouth, even though you've been married for 25 years, you have 6 kids, you're living in the same house. That gets a little too Puritan. And the real truth is, you sit down, the two of you. What are the triggers that would make this very difficult for you? And then be honest about those, respect that. Just as Debbie said, we're not going to talk about these issues, when we're alone. We're also not going to do these behaviors to go for a higher goal. And I know when one of the Church's teachings is difficult, it means the person hasn't yet really embraced the beauty and the freedom of the goal. And I've lived this myself. When it really became the most important thing for me to go higher and live as God wanted me to live, and to be free of my own lusts and desires, selfish desires, when I wanted that more, the other things became easier to resist. It's hard to resist when we're sitting when part of us is on one side of the fence and part is on the other. And that's the beauty of the sacrament of marriage. That's where grace can kick in. So pray. If it's difficult for Diane's husband, you should both be praying for each other to draw on those graces to rise above that difficulty. And then remember, difficulty can bring holiness. Mm-hmm. The cross brought our salvation. So it's not that we need to avoid difficulty all the time. We need to understand where it comes from and not be too worried about it. Does that make sense, too?
Yeah,
Sure.
Rose, this is great advice. What I always say, too, Rose, is when you have these difficult situations, it's just more time to pray the rosary. You have more time. And that's what's so wonderful about it, is that in anything that that is hard for us to overcome or to deal with or to be obedient to, I always used to say this to my kids: pray the rosary. It just gives you more time. So it's really, exactly. It's kind of it's a distraction, but a holy distraction. You know what I mean? So it's a good thing. Go ahead.
No, that's a good thing. A holy distraction is what we want, because we are being distracted. We're being pulled by things all day long, morning, noon, and night. That's life. And if we can have beautiful images around our house, holy images, places where we can go, prayer chairs, quiet places, a place in the backyard, a walk down the street,
right,
a drive to the church, something that takes us away from what's trying to pull us. Something beautiful, peaceful, calm, enjoyable. A holy distraction is a good way to fight that fight.
See, you can use that word in your ministry, Rose. You go right ahead.
Well, we had a couple other email questions came in here, Rose. And by the way, we are open to phone calls today, but we just can't take them because the lines are down right now. But God bless, many of you are emailing take2@EWTN.com. And Rose, we had a lady call in. I won't say her name here. She says, I'm listening to the show. I'm a very young wife who hasn't slept in the same room with my husband since I was 20. We are married for 13 years. I have tried to stick it out with him, but I now sleep in our kids' room, and our son and him sleep in the master bedroom. Because of all this, it has led into an affair. Now I'm in a terrible situation. I'm deeply in love, and I need advice. So this is a very difficult situation for this lady who emailed in.
Yes, it is, and I my heart just goes out to this person. And let's talk about this since we have the opportunity. Kids cannot become the center of our life. Kids cannot become the center of the family or the marriage, and that's part of the problem when we are parents, to put the children first. The children only really come first in matters of food, clothing, shelter, and emergency. The marriage has to be the solid foundation of the family. And symbolically, the fact that a boy crawled into the marriage bed with Dad, and Mom took her part of the marriage bed into the children, says that they have now sought solace and comfort in the children. And this is a form of infidelity, marital infidelity, not sexual, but emotional. And somebody, one or both of them, have given up, and I am wondering if they have gotten themselves both down to a good, faithful counselor and been honest and that's the first thing to do, is be honest about the issues, get help, get professional help, and the counselor would say, number one, stop the affair immediately, because there's no hope for the marriage when an affair is going on. So again, this is a complex situation. We can't address it on the radio, but we can certainly talk about what other people have done in similar situations, and that's get help, stop the affair, go to the Lord, beg His help, beg His graces, and hang in there, carry that cross.
Wow. I'm glad we addressed, Rose, that we have unique situations in every single marriage, because we can't just, it's interesting how you can't just put marriage in a box and try to describe each marriage, because everyone has different nuances that are playing factors. So it's very interesting. And please, I can't think of the name of the gal. Oh, you didn't share the name. Okay. Well, I just want you to know the gal that wrote in, we are going to pray around you. Yeah. So please feel those prayers. The Take Two family is committed to praying. So please know that you'll be feeling those prayers. And please listen to Rose's advice of seeking help. So I agree with you, Rose, 100%. Real quickly, the first David emailed back, Rose, and said, you hit a home run. Great advice, Rose. So thank you for that. Yeah. We're doing this the old-fashioned way. I like this with emails and stuff. This is the old-fashioned way.
Strings and tin cans.
Yeah, I like this. Okay, so we have a new David that emailed in. This is a different David who said, and this is fascinating, Rose. It kind of talks about the resentment word that you brought up, and also Teresa texted in and said the same thing. I want Rose to comment about this. And this is what David first asked about how to respond when the negatives of the past come up constantly. How to respond when the negatives of the past come up constantly. And then also they're in an empty nest situation when the kids are gone. So what should they expect? What are the expectations for each other? So there's all those dynamics there. Can you address those two? And also, Teresa says, please cover the resentment side of it. So, Rose, can you do everything? Rose, do everything.
Debbie, I'm going to set a healthy boundary with you. And the answer is no. But I want to, though. I'm like you. Okay, let's talk about the negative of the past. The negatives. That whenever somebody keeps bringing up the negatives, that means they don't have faith and trust that the issues are resolved. They're bringing up the past as a weapon to remind the person we still have a problem. Because when the problem goes away, people don't bring up the past. So that's the quick answer to that. There's still a root issue, and it's not bringing up the past; it's solving that root issue. Then when that's solved and the person has faith and trust, they're not going to be bringing up the past. Resentment is the number one killer of any relationship. And it's so insidious because we don't reveal it, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. We just sigh and we moan and we shrug our shoulders, but it's seething and boiling in there. And that will kill sexual intimacy, emotional intimacy, and take down a marriage. And we have to make a good examination of our conscience. Get a spiritual director if you can. Go to a good therapist. Talk to a real good, trusted, holy friend. Anybody who can help you pull out where you're resentful and work on those and get to a place of forgiveness, fixing the problems. And then what was the other one, Debbie? Empty nest?
Empty nesters. Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
All the empty nest does is reveal what was already there. Empty nest doesn't really bring, in my experience, a new set of problems. It reveals what's already been there because the distractions of the kids and raising in the home and all that stuff tends to cover it up. Because all of a sudden, big problems don't all of a sudden appear in people's lives. They build slowly usually. So empty nest is a good time to take stock of who you are before the Lord, your relationship with Him, number one, and what your desires are, and hopefully it's holiness, and frank discussions with your spouse to maybe rebuild a new life moving forward. It's possible. The grace of the sacrament is still there.
Thank you all for your... Go ahead, Rose.
Here's my 4-point advice to everybody when you're not getting what you want out of your marriage. Take a good inventory, and these are 4 G's. Be glad for what is good. Grieve for what you will probably never have. Draw on the grace of your marriage to let go of resentment. And then number 4, get over it. Let it go. Let it go. Trust the Lord. And be like Brother Lawrence, who said, Lord, I don't know what's going on here. I give it all to you. All I know is everything that I do to please you because of my love for you.
Amen. That's beautiful. And Rose, I want to, maybe here's a good opportunity for clarification. And we got about 3 or so minutes left. Vicki in Jasper, Indiana, emailed, and she said she disagrees with your comment that sex should be thought of as the icing on the cake. And then she goes on to talk about John Paul II and Dr. Janet Smith and others who talk about how important it is in a relationship. And I have to believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you said that, you were making the point more or less that it should not be that which the entire marital relationship is based upon, and because there are so many other elements to that. So am I correct in that clarification of what you were talking about? Maybe you can, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, thank you for that. And Vicki, thank you for bringing that up because you're right. And I am a teacher of theology of the body and a student of Janet Smith and all those beautiful things. And when I say sex is the icing on the cake, I do not mean it as it's unnecessary and it's just part of your marriage. It is the most intimate and beautiful way of expressing marriage vows, and that's what it is. Sex is the body language that expresses the free, full, faithful, fruitful love between spouses. It's powerful and it's beautiful. But we know from the teachings of John Paul II, Theology of the Body, is that sex is not the end-all and be-all of the marriage, that the marriage comes into being and the sacrament comes into being with the consent of the two people. And during the times that they're not having sex, they're just as married, they can be just as holy, and there can be just as much beautiful fruit coming from the relationship. So thank you for letting me clarify that. Sex is important. It's hugely important. It's where we come from. It's beautiful, and it points us to that relationship of God and man, and it's the icon of the way Father, Son, and Holy Spirit have communion with each other. It's powerful. Sex is it's awesome. So thank you for letting me say, when I said it was icing on the cake, I did mean, like you said, Jerry, it doesn't have to be the primary focus of the love between husband and wife.
Yeah, and Vicki, thank you for that email. Appreciate it.
Rose, so if a parish wants to have you come out, if an organization wants to have you come speak or do a retreat, best way to reach you is rosesweet.com?
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate the work that you're doing. You are hitting some really important topics in your show all the time, and I thank God for both of you.
Thank you. I know you listen, Rose, because you actually have responded to some of our shows. So thank you for being a loyal listener. Rose, real quickly, we put you on the spot the first time you came in and you were a guest, but we're going to put you on the spot again since the phone lines were down, because I just got another text message from a friend who said, could you please have her back when the phone lines are working? Rose, would you be willing to come back when the phone lines are working?
Yes, I would. I'd love to.
Thank you.
But it was great to get the email questions and Debbie some texts on her phone there. So again, rosesweet.com is where you'll find information about Rose, and she loves to go out and help people put your religion into your relationships. Rose, I love your theme on that, and I know you have a whole series of talks, many series of talks built around that. So thank you, Rose, for your time today. We appreciate it so much, and we will have you back on the show again at some point. God bless you, Rose.
Thanks, Jerry and Debbie. God bless you both.
Bye, Rose.
No reason to touch that dial either, because really coming up right after us, Monday through Friday, is Dr. Ray Garendi, and he answers your questions about, well, marital relationships and raising kids and making it through the day, Debbie, with peace and joy in your heart. So that's coming up next. Dr. Ray Garendi right here on EWTN Radio.
And I love his sense of humor. I just love it. I get it. That's why I think I enjoy his show so very, very much. But Jerry, tomorrow is all about purgatory. And I know we have a lot of non-Catholics that listen to our show. I think this is going to be a fabulous show for everyone to really tune in and listen. We're going to talk about purgatory, and it's really going to be a great conversation. So please gear up for that. Also, don't forget to go to take2show.com and look for that bright yellow button, the JD button. It stands for Jerry and Debbie. That'll take you to the jerryanddebbie.com, and you can leave your prayers on the prayer wall. It's growing every single day. You can get your Holy Land Rosary. You can get your One Faith DVD set. It's out and it's available 25% off. It's such a deal. So come on, you guys, hit all those buttons, like us on Facebook, do everything technology-wise that you could possibly do to make our day a little bit brighter.
That's right. And Debbie and I would love to come out either individually or together and speak at your parish, a mission, a conference, your next event. So it's great to have you with us here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. And again, looking forward to the show, A Deeper Understanding of Purgatory tomorrow. Debbie, until then, we want to wish people
a beautiful and blessed day. See you real soon.